Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for a great introduction. And just let's just dive in there and start doing this. This is one of my favorite sessions. And if I get to pick a session, if a organizer says, you just do a session you like, this is one of the things I often return to because this is such a fun session to do. I do a lot of sessions on Power BI governance and administration, and it can be a little bit dry topic sometimes, but this is fun. So I hope you enjoy it. The next around an hour, we're going to build things. We are going to do everything from scratch, and we're going to have a lot of fun using all the Power Platform tools. As Sean said, my name is Gunason. I am a data platform MVP. I do run a consultancy in Denmark. I come from Iceland originally. I've been doing this for quite a bit, a few years, around 15 now. I've run a user group in Iceland, and I have run both a SQL group and a Power BI group. My background is in analysis services, reporting services, integration services, so data warehousing, all that stuff. But in the last few years, I've been mainly focusing on Azure, like data warehousing, and BI in Azure and Power BI as well. My contacts over there, if you want to get in touch, you can send me an email. You can follow me and on Twitter and send me a message there, or you can do it on LinkedIn. I'm probably most responsive on Twitter. Emails, I get plenty of them, so I will answer them, but it might take a little while. So feel free to get in touch, and I will share these slides with Jean. So if you want to read through them, you can do that. So before I start, I just want to say one thing, is that this session grew up from an actual need. I used to work for a company in Iceland, and the IT department, a lot of people in the IT department, they were traveling quite a bit. So we often got someone coming into the IT department saying, "Where is X?" Well, I don't know. Does anyone know where she is? And then, if someone raised their hand, say, "Oh, I think she's in the Netherlands, or she's in the US, or whatever." And then I thought maybe we can do something where we, let people tell us where they are, so we don't have to, the person who knows doesn't have to be there. And this is where the idea came from. I did never really actually put this into production for that company. I've done it for others, but not there. But the idea is actually still from there. So that was a little bit about why, but the main reason why I created these sessions, created a real session out of this, was actually because I really wanted to just demonstrate this to other people, how easy it is to use these tools. So I am a BI guy, so I come from the BI background, so I've been doing a lot of Power BI. But at that time, I hadn't really done any Power Automate or Flow, as it was called at that time, or Power Apps. So I wanted to also try it out, but I also wanted to show other people that it doesn't have to be too difficult. Power BI has millions of users, or hundreds of millions of users. The other tools don't necessarily have the same user base, and it's actually quite often a different user base. So if you go to Google and say, what is the Power Platform? Google will tell you it's Power Apps and Power Automate. It's not Power BI, even though they all belong to the Power Platform. And if you Google Power BI, you don't get anything about the others. But they do belong to the same portfolio, but they are still very separate. But I think there's a lot of things you can do with all of them. The main focus of this session is actually on the Power Apps and the Power Automate, not a lot on Power BI. So I'm going to do very simple, boring things in Power BI, but I'm going to do fun, exciting things, hopefully, at least for me, in Power Apps and Flow. So the tools we're going to use, as I said, Power Apps, Flow, or Power Automate, and Power BI. For those of you who don't know these tools, then Power Apps is a simple, and I put that in quotes, a way to create apps for mobile phones or computers or tablets. And I say simple because the basics are very, very simple, but you can do it extremely complicated if you want to. I know people that are Power Apps developers that are basically web developers. They don't use any of the buttons. They just simply write code. But it is meant as a low-code, no-code solution, and you can definitely get very, 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 very far without writing code. Power Automate, or Flow, as it was used to call, is a tool to create data flows and processes. A bunch of different templates available. What I really do love about Power Automate is that it it is probably, in my opinion at least, it's the most simple of the Power Platform tools to get value out of. You don't really have to work a lot to get value out of Power Automate. So I highly recommend, if you haven't looked at it, see if you can take some of your manual processes or some manual processes in your department. See if you can automate or even semi-automate them. You can save a lot of time, with pretty simple things. But again, Power Automate is also supposed to be no code, low code. But there is always if you want to do complicated things, you're not going to get away from doing some JSON or doing something that is a little bit more technical in nature. But again, 90% of what you do in Power Apps and Power Automate is going to be click and point, which is a really nice thing. And then Power BI, I think most of the people on this user group will know Power BI because this is a data user group, but it's the visualization tool and data manipulation tool for self-service and enterprise, and it's where I spend most of my day. So that was the why. Now let's talk about what we are going to do. So what we're going to do is that we want to have a place where a person can press a button and register their their location information. So who it is, where they are. And we want to take that information and we want to write it to somewhere so we can pick it up with Power BI and we display it on a map. Today we're going to put it into an Excel file. It could be a SQL Server, it could be a Dataverse, it could be whatever you want. For simplicity, we're going to do it in Excel today, and also to demonstrate that we actually can do this without using specific licenses. If you have an Office license, you can do everything that we do in today's session. So you don't really have to have a Flow license or a Power Apps license. As long as you have an Office license. So that's why we are using Excel. I will come back to that. And we want to display it on a map in Power BI. So the bit boring stuff is in Power BI, but the exciting stuff is in the other one. So in Power Apps, I want to have a button that the person presses. Then the location is fetched. It's written on the screen, so the user knows not where they are, but they knows it's correct. And then we want to have another button that the user presses if they're happy with what they see on the screen, which then triggers the flow to write the data down. In Power Automate, I want to have a flow that takes that location, the name of the person, and when it happened, and I wanted to write it into an Excel file stored on OneDrive. And as I said, this could be a SQL Server, it could be a Dataverse, could be something, SharePoint list or whatever you want. In this case, it's just going to be an Excel. When that's done, I want the flow to run an update on the Power BI data set to refresh it, so we see the data, see things happening in the Excel file in Power BI. Okay, that's what we want to do in Power BI. I'd say I want to have a report that sees the location, name on a map and on a table, just to make it clear. And I wanted the reports to show this information. So simple things. This is my flow. I have a Power App that runs a flow that writes to an Excel file that's being developed in Power BI Desktop, and it's in Power BI Service, and then it's going to refresh that. So simple flow, and hopefully you will enjoy it. We are going to write it all by hand. It's because it's very, very simple. As I say, it's mostly point and click, and it's it should be there. I have a couple of places where I will do some functions, some built-in functions, but I have them all written explicitly out in my slides, and I have also have them. You will also be able to see them, of course, in the recording. So I'm just going to close the slides down, and I'm just going to go to a browser instead. So I am here in OneDrive for Business, and the first thing I want to do is I want to create the data source, because I'm going to have to write to it and I'm going to have to read from it. So that's really the first thing I want to do. So I'm just going to do it in the cloud, because I don't have to wait for it to sync from my computer up to the cloud. So I'm going to say a new, and I'm going to say an Excel workbook. And I'm going to create a table in here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to have the, I'm going to have the name of the person, I want the location of the person. And just for fun, I don't have to, but just for fun, I want to have the latitude. And I want to have the longitudes as well. And I want to have the date, so when it happened. Now, I just want to have one. I just want to put one test line in here, just so we can see, something happen, and also because we need to actually create the Power BI desktop file and publish it before we can trigger the refresh on it. Otherwise, we cannot do that. So I'm going to put in my name. I'm going to put in my address. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a full address. And I'm gonna talk about that a little in just a while, why it makes sense to put in a full address. I'm not gonna put latitude longitude. I do not know or remember the latitude longitude where I live. I could have looked them up in Google, but I just there's no need for it. It's just for fun. And today we have the 25th of August 2022. I'm in Europe, so that's why it's in the European format. But it doesn't really matter. We could easily have it, in this format. It will still be the same result, or they can figure this out. I'm gonna take, and I'm gonna mark this, and I'm gonna make this a table. And the reason why I'm making this as a table is that Power Automate has much easier to work with Excel files if they have tables. Both reading and writing, it's much easier. So it's always best to have a defined table. Now, also, I want to go to formulas, and I want to. Where is my? Are they changing stuff for me? I want to rename my my table. It used to be in formulas and formula manager, but it's because I'm in the. It's because I'm in the online. Well, so it's not to be called table 1 now. Doesn't really matter. You're not going to waste time on that, but it is good. It is a good idea to rename your tables to something, meaningful, so that when you do your, work with it in Power Automate or in Excel or in Power BI, it doesn't really have to be, table 1. It's a little more fun. So I'm done with the file now. It's going to be called book 1 to begin with. I can go on and I can call it something else, and I want to do that. I'm going to call it Cloud Data Driven, and I'm going to close it down. Come on, you're going to have to settle me. This is called Cloud Data Driven. Yes. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to fetch the URL to this so I can put it into Power BI. So when you're getting Power BI, getting Excel files or CSV files or whatever it is from OneDrive or SharePoint, you want to be using the web connector, and you want to be using the URL to it, because otherwise, you have to have a gateway and stuff like that. We don't want to have anything like that. So we just want to we just want to use the URL. To get that, I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to go here to the 3 dots, and I'm going to say details. Scroll down all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to take this one called path here, and I'm going to copy that. So I'm going to copy the path. So now I'm going to go to Power BI, and I'm going to connect to this file. I'm going to create my table. I'm going to create my map and create all that, so we are ready, for when we start inserting it from the Power Apps. So I'm just going to get data. Brand new, nothing in this Power BI report, because we're going to do something very simple. I'm going to use the web connector. Connect, and I'm going to paste in the URL to that particular file. So now I have the URL. For those of you who have never done this for SharePoint or OneDrive, you have to remember you cannot open the file and take this URL here. This won't work in Power BI. And you cannot even, you cannot go and just say, I'm going to go from here and back. This won't work either. You have to get the URL from here. That's the only place where you get the URL to the actual file itself. So that's why I have it in here. I'm going to say OK. and Power BI reads the file and says, okay, you have a sheet and you have a table. And in this case, I could take either. It doesn't really matter. Power BI shows me the same things for both of them. I am going to take the table. Generally speaking, if you're working with Power BI against Excel, if you have tables, it's always better because they're defined. There's not going to be any extra columns or extra rows that are going to be, like ghost rows or ghost columns that are going to come up. Tables are really, really useful. They're not necessary, but they're very useful in Power BI. So I'm going to pick the table, and I'm going to do transform data. Now, I know this is going to work really well, but I always do transform data because I always want to double check that Power BI. And of course, Power BI has not done my latitude, longitude, anything with them because they are nothing in it. So it says, the data type is ABC123, meaning the data type is any, and that's not going to work when we start getting latitude, longitude in it, and if we want to use it, it won't work. So we have to change this, and I'm going to have this as a text, so that everything's worked well. I could have it as a numbers as well, but it depends a little bit on how you want to work with it. So I'm happy with this. This is just fine. This is a date, and it just turned the format into my native format. So everything is supposed to be it's good. I'm going to say close and apply. It's going to run it, and it's going to be very fast because it's very simple. Of course, I should have called this something else in table 1. It's going to do that. It's going to call this location. Just a little bit nicer. So now I could start building. I'm going to start building my table. I'm going to do a table. I'm going to put that somewhere down low. I'm going to make it big, and I'm going to say I want to have the name of the person, and I want to have the location where they are. I don't care about the other. Let's have the date as well, so we can see when the date is. And I want to change the format of this date so it doesn't show the name of the month, but the format of it. And that's my table. I'm not going to do anything, other to that. I just want to see the, rows growing in here as I get it. Of course, if you were doing this for real, you would probably want to have, you don't want to have this growing endlessly. You would never have a table here. It's just because I want to show it to you. Then I want to have a graph on top here. A map. And when you're using maps in Power BI, you have a couple of options. You have the location field, and I have my location field here in my data. No, they doesn't have to be called the same, but it is called the same now. We also have latitude, longitude, and of course, the more you get it much more precise if you use latitude, longitude. So if you have that available, I always recommend that you do. If you don't have latitude, longitude available, then location is what you want. Now, if you are like we have now, you have a location which is the road, the number, the postal code, and the city and the country. If you have it like one big nice field with it, then you can just plop it into a location. If you had a country field and a city field and a postal code field and all those different things, you would need to put them in as a hierarchy so that Bing Maps, which is the mapping provider, they would be able to recognize, because there are cities that are called the same in different countries and so on. Just to be sure, I'm going to click on my location field here, and I'm going to tell Power BI that this is actually a place, which is basically a location. I'm going to tell Power BI this is what it is. This means that Power BI will tell Bing Maps that this is a place, and our Bing Maps will be able to interpret it better. It's not necessary, in this case. I know it will work without it, but it's just a good practice to do. If you had city and country and all those, you would need to mark them as that, and that will help Bing Maps be faster running your query. So I'm going to put location into location, and now it should zoom in on my city. It's where I live, and I'm just going to take the dates here and put it in the book. I'm going to take any of the fields and put it into just so the bubble will grow the more times you will check into this location. It's just a count of something. In reality, of course, I should have created a row count measure and put that in, but I'm just going to save time on this like this. So this is fine. I'm not going to do anything more here. So it's just a very, very simple Power BI report. As I told you in the beginning, this is where the boring stuff is. Now we're gonna do the fun stuff. So let me see. We're gonna put it in here. I'll overwrite this old file here that I was testing. So it saves. I'm gonna do a publish, and I'm gonna have a specific workspace for this, just because then I don't have to hide anything that's in there. Say publish, and this is all in my small demo tenant that is in my own. It's just a demo tenant I have that I do all these kind of things. So you don't have to worry about anything being seen or anything like that. It's been published, and I can go back to my, and let's see if there's anything in here. So now I have it. Report is in here. You can take a look. Yeah, it's working. That's good. So what I need to do now is that I need to go to my dataset settings, and I need to set in the use data source credentials, because otherwise I cannot do a refresh. Neither here, of course, but of course not from Power Automate either. So I'm going to see credentials. I'm going to say OAuth 2. Privacy level is organizational, because this is within my organizational boundaries. And I'm going to log in, and everything now should be fine. And just to test it, I'm going to go and I'm going to press refresh here. And you see the spinning here. It took very short time. So it's done. It took it 4 seconds to refresh. So that's pretty good. That we don't have to worry too much about that. Now that's set up. Now we are basically done with Power BI, more or less. Now let's go and do the fun stuff. So now we're going to turn over to the other parts of it, and I want to start in Power Apps, and then I'm going to move to go to Power Automate. I haven't mentioned yet, but if you have a question, just feel free to raise your hand. I'm watching the Teams channel as well. You can raise your hand, and then I will stop, and you can ask your question. If I don't notice that you have raised your hand, feel free to just unmute yourself and shout if you have a question. But now the fun stuff starts. So I'm going to go to Power Apps. If you are in Power Apps, you need on the home tab of Power Apps. Then you get this options here of starting from different places and doing different things, and you get your the apps you own beforehand down here. But in reality, normally I will go to my apps section here, where I get list of all the apps that I have, and then I use the new apps button up here. Weirdly, this all apps button here will just take you to the office.com and to all your apps, which have nothing to do with Power Apps, but all the apps you have in Microsoft 365. It's a very weird thing when they mix this terminology, that everything has the same name. It's totally weird. So if I press this down here, I will have 3 different options. So I will have Canvas, I have a model driven, and I will have Portal. And if I start from the bottom, then Portal is the way to create an app that is externally facing. So it's not internally to your company; it's externally facing to the wider public. Not necessarily all public. You can do a authentication on it, but it's still it doesn't have to be within your organization. It's been replaced, I think. I'm not sure, but there's a new thing in Power Apps called Power Apps Pages, which does the same thing. So, I think, based on nothing else than my intuition, that Portals is probably something that's going to go away at some point. But Power Apps Pages do the same thing, but they're not shown here. Model driven, that's where you have an app that you take, you start from data, and then you create the app on top of that. It's very, almost always the data is from Dataverse. So if you have Dataverse because you have Dynamics or something like that, then you can use model driven. Then it will take the data you have in the table you pick, and then it will start from there. A Canvas app is where you will have a blank canvas, and you can do whatever you want. There is a possibility to mix Canvas and model driven, so you can have a model driven app within a Canvas app. So that it's a bit of flexibility. We're going to do Canvas app now because we just want to have a blank slate. We're not going to start from Dataverse. We're just going to, our data is not going to be anywhere in it. It's going to collect data. So it's not going to take data first and before we start. So I'm going to press canvas. It's going to ask me what it's called, and I'm going to call this cloud data driven. It's going to ask me what kind of format do you want? Do you want a tablet or you want a phone? If I choose a phone, it's going to be it's going to be a portrait, and it's going to be thin. If I choose tablet, it's going to be landscape, and it's going to be white. You can choose whatever you want. You can actually change the dimensions later on, but I highly recommend that you choose whatever you want. So if this is supposed to be used on a phone, pick a phone. If it's supposed to be used on a tablet or a computer, pick tablet. If it's supposed to use it on both, you probably want to pick tablet anyway. And then, depending on where your majority of the usage is. I'm going to press create, and this is going to now open the makers portal. I don't know about you, but I say I'm from the Power BI world of side of the things, and we don't have this cool stuff like they have in the Power platform. They have if you create something in you're a maker. You're not a developer. You're a maker, and this is the makers portal. I think it's pretty cool how they've invented some terminology there. It has a splash screen pretty similar to Power BI, where it says welcome. Do you want to create a form? Do you want to create a gallery, or do you just want to get rid of this? I'm just going to pick skip here. I would normally pick this one here, but since I do demo Power Apps occasionally, I have this unchecked just so I can show people this. And here I have a blank canvas, and that is because we chose a canvas app. There is nothing on it. Now, if we back up a little bit, when I went to create a new canvas app, I could have also gone into saying, I want to take a look at all the hundreds or at least tens of different templates you have, and I want to start from a template so I don't have to build everything from scratch. There are a bunch of different cool templates, time registration, inventory management, car fleets booking, and room management, and all kind of different things that they have actually a template for, which you can then just start from there, and then you can customize it to wherever you need. So there's a really, really good one there. But as I say, we are going to build something from scratch, so there was no template that fitted us for this time. When you're in Power Apps here, so this is the canvas you have. You will have on the left-hand side, you will have a view of the screens you have. So an app can have multiple screens. You can also pick one of these buttons here. So I want to look at data, I want to look at Power Automate, and I will look at different things. On the right-hand side, you will most of the time you will have properties. This is actually something that has proved a lot in Power Apps. Before, you used to have some properties on top and some on the side, and it was very, very confusing. But now most of them are on the right. And for those of you who are not used to working with Power Apps, there is properties to everything. Everything has a lot of properties, so there's a lot of flexibility, but it can be a little bit daunting sometimes. If you think a little bit back to whatever our goal was here, our goal was to have a button you can press to get the location, display the location on the screen, and then have a button that you can submit your location. So I'm going to start by creating a button, and if I go to the Insert tab, I will have a bunch of different things that I can insert. If you wanna take data into Power Apps and display that, you are normally going to be using galleries or tables, or even forms in some cases. That's if you have a data table that comes from SQL Server or a SharePoint list or whatever, or Excel. If you want to display that, that's going to be some of the things. You also have inputs if you want people typing something in. In our case, I want to start with a button up here. So I'm going to press the button here, and Power BI will now create a button. I can place it wherever I want. This is a canvas. Say, if you're used to Power BI, this is the same as in Power BI. You can put things there wherever you want. I am going to make it really, really big, and I'm going to put it up here because just so we're all clear, I'm not going to be making this pretty. First of all, I'm a data guy, so I'm not fantastically good at making things pretty, but also, it just takes too much time. And you can see this button here has a bunch of different properties. Not only does it have a bunch of different properties, it also has a bunch of different things that you can do with it. You can have, so in this is I have an unselect false. but I can say, okay, what happens if someone hovers? If someone, what should it be italic? In what condition should it be italic? And padding, and you can use expressions for millions of things, or not millions, but a lot of things you can use expressions for a single button, and plus that it has a bunch of different properties. And this is simply a trial and error if you ever want to get to it. I am going to start by just saying this one, the text should be 26 in size. It's not supposed to say button. It's supposed to say click here to fetch location. So this is a button, and I'm telling people, if you click here, you should fetch your location. This button doesn't do anything now. So if I run this app, there's a little play button here up on the right-hand side. If I run this app, I click the button, nothing happens because it doesn't do anything now. It's a dead button that doesn't do anything. It's simply just a button. And you say unselect is false at the moment, so nothing really happened. Before I start doing the fetching the location, I'm gonna just set up the other stuff in here. So first, I want to put in a label. I'll put this label down here. And in this label, I want to be displayed the user who is running the app at the time of when you're running the app. It's the actual user. And this label here, even though it's not clickable, this is not an input. This is a label. It still has properties. Sponsor properties here, but it also has all these different properties that you can then create expressions on. So one of them is the text, so the actual input that's going to hear. At the moment, the function for it is just a text. If I click on this FX here, I will get a bunch of different functions that I can use. This is only some part of it, and I can switch between whatever I want to change. But I am simply going to change this text to saying name. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. But now that I need to fetch the name of the person that is actually looking at the app. And when I started first doing Power Apps, it was a little bit difficult to figure out, how should I know what the function is that fetches me the user? And there is a quite extensive documentation, so you can start looking at documentation. There's a lot of different, forums and different places online where people have asked these questions. You can also just try it. So I'm gonna, concatenate a string, and when I started just writing you as there's something called a user. I press that, and it opens parentheses, but it doesn't ask me for anything, any variables or parameters. So what if I just close it back? And then it says, this is actually a function, but it's not returning anything useful here because you want a text, but this is returning a record. And a record is a bunch of different columns. So it has many columns, but only one row. That's a record. So in these cases, in Power Apps, you can type a dot, and then you can pick from the columns from this particular record. So I'm going to choose the full name. And now it fetches my name. If someone else will run this, they will see their name. And just for fun, and this is nothing that it's just because I like to have fun, I'm just going to put an image here as well. And I'm going to say in this image, I'm going to say user dot image, and it fetches my image from Microsoft 365. Of course, this only works if you have an image in Microsoft 365. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay, one down. Then we want to show the location on the screen. So I'm going to put in another label, and I'm going to make it bigger. And I'm going to make the font bigger as well. And I'm going to call this location. And now I'm going to say, and Power Apps is made for mobile apps, as you know, and as I told you before. So it has, as many mobile apps, it has the opportunity or the possibility to fetch the location of the user. But since it's a mobile app, it will only fetch you the latitude and the longitude. It will only do that if the user has consented to the location. So when you're taking your mobile app, you install a new app on your mobile, it will ask you for consent for different things. If you would give this app to a person, or they would open it on a mobile phone, it will ask them, is it okay that you disclose the location? If you say no, this won't work. If you say yes, it will work. I have already done that, so you only have to do it once. So that's why it will work on mine. So built into Power Apps, there's a function called location. Again, I started writing called location, and again, this is a record, so I need to type a dot, and it has an altitude, and latitude, and longitude. Now I'm on a computer, altitude won't work. Well, it would work, but it will be nonsensical. I'm going to say latitude here, and I'm going to say and long. And I'm going to do the same thing again, location dot longitude. And now it's displaying me the latitude and longitude of where I am at the moment. Now, there are word of warning, caution here is that I once did this session at the Microsoft offices in Iceland. And I was standing in there with the podium, and I pressed it, and it said, gave me back a location in Ireland, not Iceland, but Ireland. And that was because the offices of Microsoft in Iceland, they were a VPN into Ireland. So if you're on a computer, this will give you the location of the nearest, where the box, where your internet is coming from. Not necessarily your house. Depends a little bit on how your internet is set up. If you're on a mobile phone, it will work perfectly. But if you're on a computer, it might not. So keep that in mind. But I don't want it to be latitude and longitude. I don't care. I don't want to see latitude and longitude because I cannot interpret this. I don't know what it is. This is just numbers. So I have no idea if this is where this is in the world. So I want to have this interpreted into an actual location or an address, and that's not something Power Apps can do. It cannot do it. This doesn't know how to do it. But there is a service that does that you can use, and it's the Bing Map service. So if you are interested in using the Bing Map services, you can go to the bingmapsportal.com. It's the Bing Maps Dev Center. You can sign in, or you can sign up, depending on if you have an account there or not. When you have signed up or signed in, you can come to the your own account, and then you can get some API keys that you can then use to call the Bing Maps API. Now I have a basic dev test account, meaning I can call this API. I think it's something like 5,000 times a month or something like that. If I call it more often, it's just gonna not refuse to answer. Then if you need to call it more often than that, you can then buy different plans depending on what you need. I have already done this, so I don't want to waste time on creating this account and everything. So I've already done it. So we don't have to think about that. But within Power Apps, to be able to use Bing Maps, I will need to add a data source. It might sound really weird, but a data source in Power Apps is either a data storage, which will bring the data straight in, or a data source can also be a web service or something like that you need to call to get some data in. So it depends a little bit on what you're trying. But our data source is somewhere you can get data from, but it doesn't necessarily deliver all the data at the same time. And if I go to the data source, there's a tab here called Data. I can also go to View Data Sources, and then it says, in this app there is no data. I can press Add Data, and then it starts telling me, okay, what is the things you have available? To begin with, it will show me things from Dataverse, because Power Apps and Dataverse, they are really married to each other. So Dataverse is what is underneath Power Apps. So even though you don't use Dataverse for Dynamics, you will still have Dataverse for Power Apps if you ever use Power Apps. So, and it will say, connectors and data, all models, and I can start looking at connectors and all these different things. The important thing here is that you notice that some of these connectors, they have a diamond next to it. Now, if you're from the Power BI world, you will know this is premium, and it's the same thing in Power Apps. If you have ever used a connector that is a premium connector, you will then need to buy a specific license for that app. So an Office license won't make it anymore. So, for example, a SQL Server connection is a premium connection, so you will need to have a license per user per app, or you can buy different licenses, but you need to have a license for a specific app. I want to use the Bing Maps API. That's something that is included. It is here. It's not a premium connector, so you don't have to don't have to buy a specific license for that. As long as you have the API key for Bing Maps is fine with it. So I click on that, and I'll click on it again, and now it has added it to my app. It hasn't done anything yet. It hasn't really brought any data in. It's just said, okay, you have a connector now. It's in your app. You can use it. It has methods or endpoints that you can then use. So that's what we're going to do now. So I click on my button here, and I say unselect. Instead of being false, I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to start, and when you have a connector, you can always reference them by name. So in this case, the name of the connector is Bing Maps, and I can just start writing Bing Maps, and you can see it starts showing me also the endpoints it has. It has get location by address, get location by point, get map tool, route, and all these different things. I am going to use the get location by point because I have demonstrated that I can do get latitude and longitude, but I really want the address itself. So I'm going to say get location by point, and it says, okay, for that to work, you will need to have a latitude and a longitude. And we know how to do that. So we can say location dot latitude, comma location dot longitude, and we're gonna. So that will give us the address itself, but that will just exist nowhere if we don't do anything about it. So what are we going to do? We want to go back and we want to place this into a variable. And in Power Apps, there is no such thing as creating a variable and then setting it. When you set it, you are creating it. So we can use a function called set, because that is basically creating the variable. I'm going to call my variable my location, and the content of it is going to be this one here, the call to the Bing Maps service. So now I have told it it's going to put it into a variable called my location. That's location using the latitude and longitude. So I'm going to now put a label down here. Again, it's because I want to display things on the screen. I'm going to make the font bigger so everyone can see it. And then I'm going to go and say location. And I'm going to append to that the location. And I have a variable, so I can use that, my location. And again, Power App sets, this is a record. And we need to do dot. So Power Apps returns the confidence. So how confident is it that this is the right location? The entity type, which is always going to be an address in this case, and then the name, which is going to be our address. You can also get the address, which is not going to be the full address, but only the street and number. Name is going to be the full thing, and the point is going to be the points back. We already have that, so we don't need that. So I'm going to use the name. And you see, nothing comes here. That's because I haven't pressed the button yet. So let's try it. Let's go on here. Let's press the button. And now it has put in my address here. And the fun thing about it is when you are developing Power Apps, now I have pressed this once, and I have gotten this here. Now, if I wanted to, I could start exploring what else it has in it. Because it has now stored all the different, the whole record, so I can start getting, if I want to see what is in the address part, what is in the city part, what is in this and that. So you can always do that. I have the address, I have the name, I have the method to get the address. Now I want to write it to my Excel file. So I'm going to do another button. Oh. And I'm going to call this button submit. And I'm gonna make the font a little bit bigger. Oh, did not submit the submit. This is how it is. So when someone presses this button, I want a flow to be triggered, and I want the flow to run and update my Excel file, and I want to do update the data set as well. When you want to connect a flow to a Power App, you can either develop the flow outside and then connect them afterwards, or you can then develop the flow from within Power Apps. Both things will work, and both things will create a flow that is, independent of the Power Apps. But it's just, depending on where you want to do things. I'm going to do it from within, but I have done both things, and both things work really well. Sometimes it's better to do it outside of Power Apps because you don't get the full screen if you do it within the Power App. But I want to show you how it works. So Power Apps, Power Automate, sorry, and it says, okay, do you want to create a new flow? Yeah, I want to create a new flow. And it comes up with the most used templates that built on top of Power App. So I want to add an item to SharePoint, send an email. I want to create a task or something like that. And we want to put something in SQL store procedure or something like that. But we're going to create from blank because we're going to have a little bit different than the templates here. So I'm going to say blank. And what you see now is this is the size of the window we will able to get. We cannot resize this window because it's like a splash screen. So that's why it can sometimes be better to create your Power Automate flow outside of Power Apps. Power Apps has put in this first step, which is our trigger. Our trigger is going to be Power Apps. We can connect it to whatever Power Apps we want. It's going to be connected to this one when we finish, but we can connect it to whatever Power Apps we want to connect it to. It doesn't have to be only this one. So it's not one-to-one at all. So this is the trigger. Now we need to do our steps. So first step is going to be, I want to put this into my Excel. So I write Excel, and I'm going to do the Excel Online. So you see you have Excel Online Business and Excel Online OneDrive. This one is personal OneDrive. This one is OneDrive for Business. If you want to put it on SharePoint, this is still something that will work for you, Excel Online Business, because that's also will also be able to connect to SharePoint. So I'm going to use that, and when I selected what the connector, if you can call it that, this is whatever methods that I have connected to this connector. So I can delete a row, get a worksheet, and so on and so forth. And if you look through these actions here, most of them are something to do with a table. It's because Power Automate really likes if you have a table, because then it knows where to put things. If you put something in a table, it's going to be in the bottom. If it needs to put things into a sheet, it doesn't know exactly where to put it, and it's very, very complicated to do something properly like that. I want to add a row into a table, and then it says, okay, what is the file you want to do, and where is it located? I'm going to first start by saying, okay, and because I'm logged in, everything, I'm logged into my account. That's why it just knows all my locations that are that I have an option of. If I want to do this as another user, I can go to the three dots here, and instead of having this connection, which is my email here, I can do a new connection. If I want to have a an Excel file that is for some other user service account or something like that, I can do that. But I'm just going to do it from my own. I'm going to pick OneDrive for Business. These are all SharePoint stuff, but I'm going to pick OneDrive for Business. Document library, and because I picked OneDrive for Business, the document library is called OneDrive. I don't know why this is. I think it's because if you choose SharePoint, you will have different libraries. What is the file? In my case, I have a file in the Cloud Data Driven Use group. It's called Cloud Data Driven XLSX. I'll pick that. And then it says, okay, what table do you want? And we only have one. It's called table 1. As soon as I pick that, it knows, yes, in this table, you have a name, location, latitude, longitude, and dates. If I click into name, I could, of course, hard code something in here, but that doesn't make sense. I want this to be provided by Power Apps. And this, because Power Apps is the trigger here, it says, okay, you have the option to say ask in Power Apps. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to the next one. And weirdly, it does not have asked in Power Apps now as it had before. And this took me off when the first time I did this. I was like, what the hell? How can I do this? I want this to be a different variable. This is the variable that is in here. I don't want to use that again. I want to use different variables, depending on what it is. And then I noticed this see more here. So I click that. Ooh, ask in Power Apps comes. I don't know, this is a design choice. Someone is burning in hell for this design choice, but no, this is what it is. Asking Power Apps, latitude, see more, asking Power Apps, longitude, see more, asking Power Apps, date. I could ask that in Power Apps as well, but I'm just gonna have fun with an expression here. So I can do dynamic content, which is basically just Power Apps because I don't have anything else in here. But I can also use expressions. You know, there's an expression library in here which has a bunch of different functions, as you see down here, a lot of different ones, and you can click see more for each one of these categories. The one I'm gonna use is called date format date time. I want to use UTC now because that's where now I like to use UTC time. I'm not in UTC, but I like it because it makes sense for me. But because I only want the date anyway, so I want to have the Y and MM and DD. This is how I want it to be in. Say OK, and now the expression comes in here. So you can use expressions, or you can use dynamic content, or you can use static content. I'm going to do new steps because now I've written into my file. Now I want to refresh Power BI. So I'm going to write Power BI. And for Power BI, I have a bunch of different things. And beware that, for example, add rows to a data set is not adding rows to a normal data set, but only to a streaming data set. And create, check-in, and all these different things here are only for the new metrics or goals, as they used to be called. So a bunch of different things for that. Page-generated reports, exports, and stuff like that. What we want is to refresh a data set. And because, again, we are logged in, we don't have to really think. I can just go in here. It says, OK, what workspace do you want? And this is all my workspaces because I'm logged in. Cloud Data Driven. What is the data set? It's called Cloud Data Driven. And this is basically it. Now, in my experience, when Power Apps writes or Power Automate writes into an Excel online file, there is a lag. For some reason, there's a lag that makes it so that it doesn't get saved before I refresh the dataset. So I very often go in here and I say I want to put in a delay to say, wait a minute, and I'm going to have 1 minute here before you go in and down and refresh the dataset, because otherwise, it's going to be so fast that the dataset is not going to fetch the newest version because there's some kind of a lag in there. Another thing that's a little bit weird about Power Automate is when you create a flow like this, the name of the flow is this here, untitled here. You can override this. So I can call this data driven. Let's call it Cloud Data Driven to be sure. And then I can press my save button. And it will say here if it has saved it. Oh, and it saved it. And now it's back into my Power App. So now it's in my app, but it's not connected to my button yet. So my button is here. The app is the Power Automate is here, but it's not. So my button is still on select is false. But remember, I told you that you can reference things by name. So I can start doing cloud, and it has cloud data driven .run. So that's a method to run a Power Automate. And it says, OK, for me to run, I will need 5 variables, or 4, sorry. I need to have a name, I need to have a location, and a latitude and a longitude. And now I can start just writing user. And because I did not put this into a variable, I cannot fetch that from anywhere. So I just need to say full name, comma, the location I have in a variable. So my location dot name, comma, location dot latitude, and location dot longitude. Oh. So now this one will work and it will run my flow. So to try it, let's go and try it. If I click here, nothing's going to change because I'm still in the same location. That's why this one will, pressing this button won't really do anything. If I press this one here, nothing really happened either, right? but it's because that they actually call the flow to run. If you were doing this for a production environment, what you would want to do is you want to let the flow call back to the app when it's done, saying I'm done. But that takes a little bit more time. It's doable. It's not a very big deal, but you can do it. But I didn't want to use time for that. I'm almost out of time actually. But what I can do now is I can go to my Power Automate, and I can see I have a new flow. It is running now. So, and because I have a 1 minute delay, that's why it's going to be a little bit running a little bit late. But let's go and see if our file has been updated. See, now I actually have a new line in our file. So that's good. Now the big question is if it's going to update my data set. This is something, 1 minute is not always enough. So I'm really crossing my fingers that this will work in Power BI. So let's see. Yay! So now I have 2 dots here. I have 1 dot here. This is the new place, and this is where I was before. And if I would run it again, this dot will be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because it would have more counts on it. So this is what I wanted to show you. What I wanted to show you is that it's not overly hard to get started with Power Automate and Power Apps. And there's a lot of value to be fetched there, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy working this. But if you want to get started using Power Automate or Power Apps, you really have to have something real to work with. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit fruitless. If you just go through a lesson, it's going to be a little bit, you're not going to get into the corners of it, like I have done by doing this real world project here. So let me go a little bit back to my slides, just a second. So I have in my slides, I have exactly what I did. So I create an Excel document. I have these particular 5 columns in it. Defined. This was what I did in Power BI, in Power Apps, and I have this. If you want to call Bing Maps, I want to, with a variable. I have, getting the variable from the variable, how to get the username. I have in my Power Automate how to get the date, and from the Power Apps how to run the button. How to run the Power Automate flow from the button itself. So everything should be in here. If you want to try this out yourself, I highly recommend it. So hopefully, you will get something out of it. Over that, I'm gonna just open it up for questions. Anyone have a question? Oh, there's something in the chat that I haven't really looked in the chat. So Tom, slides will be available. Yes. So Fernando said, "Are you going to save your Excel file?" No, because Excel online it just saves for you. You don't really have to save, so it's really nice. Yeah. Any further questions? Anyone have a comment or question? Want to say something? Huh? I just want to then finish off with just a small comment. Is that as I said, in the beginning, Power Automate and Power Apps are really good tools to get, productive, especially Power Automate. Power Apps is a little bit more niche, but Power Automate will give you a lot of value very fast, because in every organization, there is some process that is, can be automated or semi-automated, even though it's just notification. Send me an email when this happened. When this file gets updated on SharePoint, send me an email, or just pick it up and move it over there. All these different things that can be done with Power Automate are really easy. Power BI, of course, is very close to my heart. It's my favorite thing. So, do I have a blog? Yes, blog.notinsights.com. It's not something that I don't write a lot of blogs, but I am in the middle of a blog series now on Power BI governance. I'm to part 3 now of my 7-part series on Power BI governance. So if you're into that, that's something that I have on here. If there's no questions, then I'm just gonna say thank you very much, and then I hope you enjoyed it. I will make sure that Sean has the slides so he can send it out to all of you, so you can then pick through them. Otherwise, the video is going to be online in some days, and then you can go through it again. And I know I speak sometimes fast, and it's it can be hard to follow, but you can slow down and pause and everything like that. So thank you very much, and have a really nice rest of the Thursday.